A big kudos to the organizers because finding a slot for people across the globe and then organizing this event is not an easy job. So having said that, today I'm here, and of course, thanks for giving me this opportunity to give a talk about the Microsoft Insider Risk Management and Adaptive Protection, and how effectively we can use in our organization. Okay, so as everyone knows, this is a one-day virtual event. Again, thanks to the organizers. They also have some exciting prizes. So I highly recommend to take a look at all the events, the virtual events, and the topics that's really going to help everyone in implementing and utilizing this effectively in your organization. And yeah, of course, this is completely into Purview, Defender, and all the related technologies. Okay, so going further, a little bit of an introduction about me for people who do not know me. I'm myself Satish Pandit. I've been into the IT industry for more than 18 years, and also into the MVP program for the 12 years. I'm an MCT for 6 years, and also I write blogs, ecloudinfo.com. You can take a look at my website. There are some interesting stuff. If you like, you can also take a look, and if there are any feedback, feel free to comment on all the blogs. And also I have a YouTube channel, DevOps Info. Feel free to follow the channel. There are some interesting videos, especially in the topic Purview as well. Yeah, I'm also an author of the book Reimagine Remote Working with Microsoft Teams. That is also nice. If you're into Teams, you can also take a look at that. And apart from that, the most fun stuff, I do cycling a lot, and if you're a cyclist, if you have some interesting stuff to discuss, you can always reach me out. Okay, so now going into the topic why we are here, because we are going to talk about like how effectively we protect our organization from any kind of threat that can approach in accessing your data. So before starting the topic, I would like to do a little bit of a deep dive on like what are the type of threats that your organization can always face. So when we talk about the threats, the first threat that always comes into to everyone's mind, every organization, they focus on the external threats. Of course, external threats are very important because we need to have the correct guardrails and the protection system, and and all the web services and applications that's exposed to the internet. So the first one, we all know, like the cyber attackers exploit the phishing and stolen credentials to gain unauthorized access to sensitive data. This is the most common technique that's been there for quite a long time. But the challenge, what's happening now is because with the advanced utilization of the AI tooling, they are offering like phishing as a service. Like for example, phishing as a service can be consumed by the cyber criminals to perform such a large-scale attacks. And these sophisticated and large-scale attacks compromise at the moment 82.6% of the phishing emails now. So all the phishing email that's received by every organization is not the old traditional way. They are going with a more sophisticated AI-enabled with the phishing as a service. And the second one, we all know, like the supply chain attacks, which is also getting more common because like your data, your application is not hosted in the data center, you're on-prem anymore, because every organization is going towards the cloud, the PaaS, the IaaS, the SaaS services. So as a result of that, even if a supply chain is attacked, so that there is a possibility of a lateral movement and your data being compromised. So you need to be. There are also like a recent example, like for example, a giant Ingram Micro. They were attacked on a supply chain attacks, and that distribution, that attack affected a lot of licensing and ordering systems to the downstream partners. So this is one classic example that can also happen for all the dependent partners and also the companies. The third one is the social engineering. This is very important, which I wanted to talk, which is getting very common these days. You might have also noticed, like for example, if you're receiving a call from an anonymous number, for a few seconds you don't hear any voice from the other side, and they simply disconnect the call. So this is something recording your voice, and then they are just trying to make a deep fake out of it. So this is a more common thing which is happening at the moment. So my advice is always, if you're getting a call from an anonymous number, make sure that you stay silent for the first 5 to 6 seconds, or even 10 seconds. Only if you receive any, someone is speaking on the other side, please start your conversation. So don't just give any conversation. Don't start the conversation before you hear anything from the other side, because now there are a lot of deep fake things happening at the moment. Even about the recent thing, like 25 million, the compromise from the UK engineering firm Aru, that also happened. So these are the examples. And the last one, which we know, because every organization is adopting to the cloud, the fastly going to the AI part. So there are a lot of publicly exposed cloud storage. So we need to make sure that it's not the default practice. You need to always secure these kind of endpoints, these kind of exposures, because there was also like 8 TB of cloud meeting recordings exposed and misconfigured storage in 2025. So these are things like we need to always make sure the external threats are not accessible to the cyber criminals. So the next one, one second. So the next one we talk about is the insider risks. This is the most common type of the data exploitation that's happening in every organization, but this most of the time it's common left unnoticed, because all the time we focus on only one part. Okay, we bring up an application, and that application is exposed to the internet. It's available over the internet, so we need to have a multiple level of protection, firewalls, the app proxy, whatever you call it, you protect them. But that's not the only thing, because there is also a very huge compromise of your data that can happen from insider risk. So if we talk about the insider risk, there are two types. Like one is the malicious, and the other one is non-malicious. So when we talk about malicious, for example, like Coinbase support agents, they leak the customer data in 2020, which means like they hired few employees, and then they made them as a support agents for Coinbase, and then basically they want the customer information, account details, and partial social security numbers. So there are a lot of examples like this. Even like, for example, the famous there are a lot of the North Korea attacks, which if you Google you can find a lot. So these kind of like partial hiring, and then doing a data exfiltration and then leaving the organization, that's also happening. These are all malicious. So in order to avoid these kind of malicious, it's always important that you need to have a proper a HR system and data, the employee verification before onboarding anyone. And also, like, there is also another possible of data exfiltration from malicious side. This is very, very challenging to identify. For example, you talk about an employee who has been working with your organization for more than 5 years, or even 1 or 2 years, or even a contractor who has been working for 1 year. So after some period of time, they understand, they come to a conclusion, I need to leave the organization. They say my contract is going to be terminated. So during the time, I see like there are really nice projects where I'm working on. I wanted to take this with me because that could benefit me for my future projects. So just one classic example is like departing Apple employee. They stole gigabytes of confidential SOC design before moving to a startup competitor. So these are like real things which is happening at the moment, because inside like a recent survey which was done in the 2025, they said most of the confidential company proprietary information are being leaked by the insider risks. So this is like a malicious. The last one, like, which is about non-malicious. There are a lot of examples when we talk about non-malicious. Like, for example, you talk about an HR employee, an HR intern who joins your organization. He or she finds a very interesting project that's been worked in the finance part. Like, for example, a company is acquiring your sister concern. They see, okay, this is a very nice project. I would like to read more about it. Just downloading it and sending the confidential document, uploading this confidential document to their personal OneDrive, or just taking a printout and leaving it in the cafeteria. So these things can happen, right? These are unintentional. So these are two types of insider risks which are being left unnoticed, and as a result of that, a more amount of data exfiltration is also happening. So the last one, which I also wanted to touch upon a little bit, is about the AI exposure. So when we talk about the AI exposure, because of course we all are using the AI tooling at the moment to increase our productivity, and of course that's also helping us a lot. Uh, and the challenge is, like, we need to be very mindful of what kind of data that we are feeding into AI. So one example we talk about, let's take an example of a marketing team which is effectively using AI tooling. For example, RAG bot. They are using an RAG bot, and then, like, to do a transformation of a better, marketing news, they fed an information by using Gen AI to draft a product launch, but it accidentally included the unreleased features, and it was published by the marketing team. This can well enough happen, right? Because the marketing team is not technical enough to understand which features are currently live, which features are in the roadmap. They don't know, because they just fed the data. They're asking they to give a better one, and of course AI can go and fetch if there is no proper guardrails. It can always go and fetch everything about that information in your internal database, and it give a well structured one. So these kind of things, it can happen. And in a recent study, they also say 77% of the data leak uh, are happening through ChatGPT and other AI platforms. That's the study that was done in 2025. And also, the more than 50 of all paste events in AI tools, they contain corporate data. So which is very important, right? Because if you talk about Purview, we have a lot of facilities, but I'm not going to touch that, because this 40 minutes is definitely not going to help us in covering this part. But in Purview, we have the DSPM for AI. Those things you can, or even if you're not confident enough to touch that immediately, you can start with MDCA, like Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, just allowing only the approved AI apps. For example, allow only Copilot, and the rest you can eventually fine tune them and allow them based on a requirement. So these kind of things, if you don't do, then there is a quite possible, your data can be very well leaked through the AI. Okay, so talking into that, I really wanted to take you into the demo. Here we are going to focus only on the, like, we are going to focus basically only on the insider risk management and the adaptive protection. Let me bring the window here. Okay, so when we talk about the adaptive protection, before we start the adaptive protection, definitely there are a few prerequisites in place that you need to keep in mind, because excuse me. So like, the adaptive protection is closely correlated with the insider risk management, and the insider risk management is closely aligned with the Microsoft Purview and the data loss prevention. So what is adaptive protection? We are basically creating a preventive controls on our endpoints. Let's say if someone is trying to exfiltrate the data from your corporate managed device, then you should have a preventive measure instead of a reactive measure. So, but in order to reach to that preventive measure, there are a lot of prerequisites that you need to meet in place before enabling the adaptive protection. So the adaptive protection is not something you go to the Purview and then you say, okay, this is the toggle switch, I'm turning it on, and well and done enough. No, that's not the way it's going to work. So first, you need to have a lot of prerequisites and readiness, and after that, the last step is only the adaptive protection. So today we are going to look into all the prerequisites and readiness from the beginning, and then we'll see the adaptive protection in the last part. So when we talk about the prerequisites and readiness, of course, the devices must be the intra ID join as well as the Intune manage. So it's the first thing, like in my case, like there is one test device. So this test device is intra ID join, and it should have complaint. And the next one is the Microsoft Intune, and also the Intune, the devices must be onboarded in the Intune. So, well, you can ask why are these prerequisites is required? Of course, you can enable the adaptive protection and the insider risk management partially, meaning like you can enable this only for the cloud workloads, saying like protect only for the Office, the Microsoft 365 apps, but that's not going to be effective. So you need to have a full control on the endpoint, where the corporate endpoint where the users are having. So in that cases, like you need to first onboard the device to Enter ID, and then Intune onboard them to Intune, so that you have the full visibility till the endpoint, because the agent would be present and the agent would be sending all the information, and then you would be able to control it. The next part after onboarding them to the Microsoft Intune is you need to basically onboard them into the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint also, adopts the policies from the Microsoft Purview, which is like it is adopting the DLP policies. So the moment when it adopts the DLP policies from the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, any actions that is executing on an endpoint will be based on the DLP policies that you apply on the Microsoft Purview side. So this is important. So you need to have this also in place. So when you talk about the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, just a second. So when you talk about the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, like for example, this is one of the device which is onboarded to the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So you see here, okay, the real-time protection is enabled, the behavior monitoring is enabled. Where could I see, for example, the applied policies? Like you would be able to see there is somewhere here. Learn about no. Okay, you see here DLP policy sync details. So the DLP policy sync is updated. So you see here view all policies on this device. For example, when I click on view all policies on this device, I'd be able to see what policies are enforced on this endpoint. Like for example, I have one policy which is adaptive protection policy for endpoint DLP. So this part is enabled on this device. So like any kind of data exfiltration, like for example, if someone is trying to like copy a data from the laptop to the USB device, then this adaptive protection endpoint for DLP can happen. There are a lot of examples. For example, if someone is trying to print a sensitive document, of course, that can also be taken care of with this adaptive protection policy for endpoint DLP. So so now it's very important to understand the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint also needs to be onboarded to the device. So the last one, the prerequisites from the device perspective, is even in the Microsoft Purview, you need to make sure that your device is onboarded successfully. So only then you get all set of policies that's applied on the Microsoft the Microsoft Purview, and that settings are replicated to the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Like for example, if you see here the Microsoft Purview devices, I have the test device onboarded. So on the test device onboarded, you can also see like the configuration status, real-time protection, behavior monitoring is enabled, and also the DLP policies. Here you see the configuration is updated, the DLP policy sync is updated. You can ask why are we going this detail? These are the small nitty-gritty details like you need to have in place before touching the actual solution, because only this is going to give you a complete protection on your endpoint. Just protecting only the Microsoft 365 workloads directly, it's not the right way. So even for example, if you see here, you can see view all policies on this device from here, and also there is also an option view all sensitivity data activity for this device. Yeah, that is also possible. This one definitely helps your SOC team in the reactive approach, but of course this is not more effective. You always need to go with the proactive approach. That's the reason Microsoft released the Insider Risk Management module. So what we saw till here from the beginning is like we understood like the prerequisites, like having them enter ID, join, Intune, manage. Okay, it's giving a better device management, and then and then onboarding them to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint it's protecting my device from all the malicious activities. That's good, but it doesn't stop there. You also need to onboard them to Purview and the Microsoft Purview, and also need to have the all the DLP rules in place. So if you have till this place already, there are two things. If your organization is already using till this place, then you already have reached like half of the prerequisites. So in most of the cases, if you talk about all the organization, they are Intune managed, Enter ID join, the MD is in place, and also they have the EDR in place, and of course they're always using the Microsoft Purview. So if you have reached already this place, there are only the remaining 50% which you need to accomplish. By doing this, then you are creating a proper endpoint protection in your organization. So going further for the adaptive protection, what you need to do is there are few settings in the insider risk. So to reach the adaptive protection, the next part is like the insider risk management. So the adaptive protection works together with the insider risk management. So you need to come to the insider risk management, and in the insider risk management, you need to go to the Microsoft Purview, and in the settings, there are a lot of things which you need to enable. But it's not mandatory that you go and enable everything at one time. My advice is you can start with few parameters and then eventually improve them. So in the insider risk management, the first thing I would recommend is just go to the analytics and turn on the show insights at tenant level, and also show insights at user level. These two things are very important, because what happens when you turn insights at the tenant level and insights at the user level, having all the previous prerequisites in place, it is going to scan what kind of data exfiltration that has already been happened in your organization for the past 30 days, and it is going to give you suggestion, and it will give you suggestion you can create these kind of policies. So that's very important, right? Because it's something because this insider risk management is working with the Microsoft 365 Unified Audit Logs. So when you turn this on, it is going to look into the Microsoft 365 Unified Audit Logs. There are two things. For example, if you turn it on at the show insights at the tenant level, it's basically going to look into all the data exfiltration that happens at the tenant level, and it's not going to give the information at the user level. That can also be the case. For example, you turn on the first one at the beginning stage, and you see, okay, these are the data exfiltration all happening, and then you can send in prepare a communication email and send it to the organization. You can say, hey, we see these are the data exfiltration that's happening. For example, people uploading personal data, people uploading the corporate data into their personal tenant, people uploading the files to the OneDrive. So these kind of things, you can say, we see this much amount of data exploitation that's happening. We are going to go into the next phase, where we are going to turn on the user level, where we see the the actual the impact of the corporate data being exfiltrated from the user level. So you can have this in phases and have that your project plan. So that will also help in first educating the users this is going to happen, so people get aware. When during the time, we can also start with the user education awareness session, and after that you can see the trend if it is being reduced, and then you turn on the user level and see still how many users are doing the data exfiltration. So this is one part in analytics. And the second one, you talk about the data sharing. So in the data sharing, you can export these details to the SIEM services. For example, even to see this on your SIEM service, you need to turn this on. I recommend this to turn this on. That is also a good option to do a further analysis. So this is also required, for example, if you wanted to do more analysis on the Sentinel side. And there are things for example, excuse me, you see exclusions. Of course, we always hit into a scenario exclusion, where you see some genuine activities or partners where there are some cases the data needs to be shared, and that in those cases you might be ending up in a false positives. So in those cases, you can simply add those domains to exclude. For example, this is my partner domain where for example, my finance team is uploading my corporate data into the domain. Just don't evaluate the insider risk over here. So in those cases, it will just exclude it. And also, this part is very important, the email signature attachments. Like, for example, when people started sending emails, the email exchange happens between the external partner and your company. Like, over a period of time, you see, like, in the trail mail, over the bottom, you see the signatures being attached. So at some point of time, this is also been identified as a false positive. This could be also be identified as false positive, and in order to avoid that scenario, please turn this on. That's very important. There are a lot of things which you can explore. I'm not going to get into all these considering the time. And this part is very important, like the Microsoft Teams. Like, for example, when you turn this on, I highly recommend to turn this on, because the moment when you turn this on, what happens is, for example, when a case is created in the insider risk management, we'll take a look at that in the next few minutes. When a case is created in the insider risk management, associated Microsoft team is also created for that particular case. And like a person who is assigned for the insider risk management analytics, insider risk management investigators role groups will be added to that particular name. So this makes it very simple, right? Because when we talk about the insider risk management, like there are multiple parties involved here, because like you also need to, for example, involve your HR team and get the feedback from them. What kind of action can I take for this kind of data exfiltration done by an employee? Because it's not the IT who can decide here. Because like the IT is like identifying the SOC team, your SOC team, like when utilizing this tooling, they are identifying, okay, an insider risk, the data exploitation has been done by your employee, and then eventually, the case is created. But what is next? Because the IT team cannot do, because this is a data exfiltration. For example, a company confidential data has been shared. So in those cases, you also need to involve the appropriate legal team or your HR team. So in those cases, like when a Microsoft Teams channel is created, when a case is created, then it makes them easier for speeding up this operation. So that's the reason Microsoft has given this option. I highly recommend to take turn this on. You also have, for example, the Power Automate flows. Like you can also do the Power Automate flows, which is very nice over here. You have here the cloud flows, the desk cloud flows, so you can do that if you have any interesting ideas. That's also an option. Last but not the least, very important thing which I would like to say is, if you want to keep the usernames as pseudonymized, you can choose this option. Or if you like say do not show the pseudonymized version of the username, just simply go with the second option. So here what you can do is, initially you can just simply go with the show pseudonymized versions of the usernames, and then basically you are going to see what level of data exfiltration is done. Excuse me. And then later, after some period of time, you say, okay, we are going to go very strict in the policy, which is like do not show pseudonymized version of usernames. Like you would be able to identify the users who are doing the data exploitation, and then a strict legal action or a HR action would be taken for any more sensitive company proprietary data. So these kind of things like you can do over here. So these are the prerequisites that you need to do for the insider risk management. Having done this in place, the next part which you need to do is basically coming into the solution. So when you come into the solution, like this is basically the insider risk management, the overview. Just a second, the cloud portal is taking some time. So when you come into the insider risk management, I highly recommend to first start with the recommendation. But keep in mind, again, I'm telling you this, please do not try to enable the insider risk management before completing all the prerequisites. Because if you're just starting this before touching all the prerequisites, then you're only partially covering. So that is not going to help. You have remaining 50% of the place where the data exploitation can be done. So if you talk about the insider risk management recommendations, they are split into 5 categories. The first one is the setup. In the setup, like you turn on the analytics, get to know the insider risk management, configure the insider risk settings, create your foot. We already went through few of them in the insider risk management settings, which is good. Um, the next part is like you need to create a policy and then make sure your team can get their jobs done. So this is the setup. The next one is the investigation. So when you talk about the investigation, of course, we have enabled a tooling. The tooling is going to identify what kind of data exploitation is happening at the moment. And then finally, we are just going to receive, the feedback from the tooling. And now certain action must be done, because this is most of the company where they miss, because what they do, they bring a tooling, they enable it, and they said, okay, this is done, my job is done. We have the insider risk management, but we should have a proper SOC team who is taking care of them. So if there is no such team, then it's recommended you need to set up a team for the investigation, because there must be someone who review the users whose activity is being scored, investigate a case, and then that's very important. And the next part comes the fine-tune detection. The fine-tune detection is like, of course, over a period of time, you need to fine-tune your policies as well, because initially there could be some false positives which you need to, and also one more thing I wanted to tell you, the insider risk management works on something called user-based risk score. So when you talk about the user-based risk score, when you turn on a policy, let's say like you're turning on a policy for a data exfiltration for Microsoft SharePoint or Teams, or someone uploading files to like a personal uploading files to Hotmail or Gmail, or uploading files via the web. So these kind of things, you can set the user-based risk score. When you see like this kind of activities happening for the one time, then a score, like let's say a medium is assigned. This happened for the next time, then the score high is assigned. So initially you can see some false positives. So that's the reason you always check your policies and do the fine tuning. And later, when you have the proper policy, like you need to go with the comprehensive protection and the extended integration. So when you talk about the extended integration, this is where we see the adaptive protection comes into place. So here the adaptive protection, you can assign a preventive measure. For example, when the user base risk score for a person copying file to USB like copying files to USB stick, or taking a printout of a sensitive document, or uploading files to the OneDrive, it happens like more than 2 or 3 times. Just simply block access to the Microsoft 365. You can do such things like that. So I'm going to show you a few alerts, so you get an idea of how it is and like how it is working. So in my case, excuse me, you see there are some few scenarios, like for example, this is my account, this is another test account. You see like an alert is created. So the moment when an alert is created, you have a opportunity to go and confirm that, and the moment when you confirm that, the case is created. So the moment when the case is created, you just need to simply go and assign it. You have an opportunity to assign. So when you assign, you can assign this to a SOC agent, and then they can take a look at it. So if you see like one of the example which I did recently, I think it was a day before yesterday. Yesterday. So I would see like, for example, file copy to removable media. So like this is my account. I simulated few examples. So you see here like I have copied a file. It would say the source location is removable, destination location is removable. So these kind of things, like for example, I copied this to a USB. It also says all information. So what item it has been copied. These are the few examples, and also like you also see like file externally shared from SharePoint online. So sensitive response received from Copilot. So there are a lot of things which you can do here, like email sent to external recipient, like says. So there are a lot of fine tuning which you can do here. For example, even someone is trying to send a sensitive document which is attached and sent to your email, that can also be done. Okay, so after that, you see the cases has been created, and this cases is been then assigned to your SOC team, and then they can work on it. So this is like a reactive approach, but still it is very effective, by the way. If you have a very good SOC team, I highly recommend to go in this way, because this is like initially helping to understand where the data exploitation is happening in your organization, and this is very much recommended. And also the last one which I want to talk about is the adaptive protection. So when you talk about the adaptive protection, as I stated earlier, there are three types of risk levels where you can play here in the adaptive protection. So in the adaptive protection, like, you can apply the policies based on the minor risk, moderate risk, or elevated risks. So like the first thing what you need to do is, like, yeah, in order to work for the adaptive protection to work, you need to complete all those prerequisites which we saw, and later you just simply need to come into the adaptive protection settings and turn this on. So after you turn this on, you need to wait for some time. Like it takes basically 24 to 48 hours for this to work, for initial check in your tenant, and after that you will be able to see how much elevated risks are present in your organization. So the adaptive protection works in a combination of the conditional access policy and a data loss prevention. So the data loss prevention is like something, what is the the policy that you have created here in the insider risk management, and then the conditional access policy is like there is an option to create a conditional access policy for adaptive protection, and here like you can say if such kind of activities happens, then block access. I'm going to show that example to you. So here you come into the insider risk levels. In the insider risk levels, like you see here, you can choose the data, the policy of the insider risk management. So here I have selected the malicious data leak policy. Keep in mind, you will be able to select only one DLP policy, only one insider risk policy. So here in this case, I have just created, I have selected malicious data leak policy, and then you see like when the elevated risk level is high, moderate, or minor, what actions. So the past activity detection, it goes to 30 days of previous action, and then expire the insider risk level when the alert is dismissed after 30 days. And then you see the user assigned insider risk level. So like for me, there are two users here. Like for example, the user Sriram is having a case of potential data leak, and Satish is having a there is an IRM. So what happens, like, here is the conditional access policy. I have disabled it because what happens, like, if I enable it, because it blocks access to my tenant as well, because I'm the global admin, then I won't be able to execute this demo. So as a result of that, this conditional access policy kicks in, and then it simply blocks access to the Microsoft 365 apps. Here, like the data loss prevention policy. Okay, I want to talk about this. This policy comes in default because you need to keep in mind, like the insider risk policy, it picks one insider risk policy, and this data loss prevention policy, it creates two data loss policy by default when you enable the adaptive protection. Don't touch this policy. My recommendation, don't touch this policy, because it creates one for devices and one for Exchange. Just leave it. Only play around with this insider risk policy on the malicious, on the insider risk clouds. And after some time, you will see like user assigned risk levels here, and then obviously when the risk level is going elevated or moderated based on the insider risk level you set here, then obviously it is going to block the access to the Microsoft 365 apps. So this is what I wanted to give an overview in the demo. Let's go back into the slide. I wanted to give some takeaways before we conclude. Excuse me. Okay, so what are the key takeaways? My suggestion is, of course, we have a tooling in place that's perfectly working, but it's not something, we should not go with an idea of fire and forget. So the first thing is, like, you turn on the analytics, and then you see what kind of data that's coming in your organization, and then you always keep the data pseudonymized, like we saw the option in the insider risk settings. Just start with pseudonymized, see what kind of data exploitation path that's happening in organization. Like, for example, people copying files to USB, then you see, okay, and there are more easier ways where I can block access to USB. That is also an option. And or for example, people taking a printout of confidential data, then you can also look for some other workarounds as well. And the third part is like you always educate the users. This part is very important because there could be a lot of unintentional leakage that could happen. One classic example I can tell you is, for example, people using the PDF converter online to convert one of the sensitive documents. For that, there must be some tooling already present in your organization which they can use it. So this kind of small education always helps a lot in the data exfiltration, to reduce the data exfiltration. And the fourth part is like identify the trends, and then you always balance between the privacy and the risk management, because at the end you're touching the personal data, so you need to make sure like what kind of data you're going to scope in this solution. And last but not the least, very, very important, partner with legal, privacy, and HR from the beginning, because it's not something, it's only an IT tooling, because it's the data exfiltration. Even the tooling is working effectively fine, perfectly good. You are able to identify what level of data exfiltration is happening. But at the end, you need to identify what is the action. And you need to see, like, is there something that needs to be corrected on your side? Okay. The refinement, this is also very important. Don't look into the solution completely. I wanted to solve this, at one stage. So just pick the use cases at one. Like, for example, one of the very good use cases, like users leaving your organization. Start with the policy users leaving your organization. There is a policy in the insider risk management, the user leaving your organization. So pick that policy in the insider risk management and then connect that with your HR data connector. Like the moment when the user resigns, you receive that information from your HR data connector, and then or even if the HR data connector is not present, take that information from your Entra ID, account, and then like when the user is left, then you see like what kind of data exfiltration happened. But the best thing is like when you start getting the connection from the HR data connector, you can do that proactively when the user resigns. So that is one of the best part. Like only in this case, a lot of data exploitation will happen. And then eventually expand the capabilities for all the other parts. And I highly recommend to revisit the indicators and the triggering event every time. Don't leave the policies after it is created. You see like what benefit it's coming, what kind of alerts is generating. You need a fine tune over that. So these are the things I wanted to tell. I think I have the next almost 2.5 minutes. If anyone is having questions, feel free to ask me, or else you can also drop me an email to satish@easycloudinfo.com for any topics related to the Microsoft Purview. I'm really happy to discuss further.
All right. Folks, if you have any doubts, you can raise up your hands and shoot the questions, or else we can wrap up the session. Yeah. So huge thanks to you, Satish, for the awesome session. We have really enjoyed the insights that you have shared with the community. So thanks for taking the time to be part of the session and the event. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.